Welcome into the Why Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. We are on episode 34. We are going over the NFL Week 2 recap, and we're heading into NFL football Week 3. I've had a rough start to my fantasy outing so far, but I'm still pumped that football is back in our lives, guys. How you doing?
Same boat. Better off of last week. I mean, the first week, I think I'm in 6 leagues. I went 1-5. Feeling pretty bad about myself, but
yeah, that is the roller coaster fantasy.
Yeah, and then this past one, I went 4-5, thanks to Derrick Henry and Terry McLaurin. But we'll get into it.
Yeah, I was on the other side of that. Thursday night started off great. And then literally I got Cooper Kupp, I got Derrick Henry, and it just went downhill.
I am also a fallen victim to Derrick Henry, and he's a bad man. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. But as our intro goes, I'm your monotone master. Brian's our fantasy foreseer, and we are joined by our raging Rumney. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media, YouTube. You can watch the show live, and we're on TikTok and Instagram as Why You're Wrong FFB, and on Twitter as You're Wrong FFB. And you'll find us live tweeting some of the games occasionally when we got some free time. But we got some week 1 headlines to react to, so what I want to start off with is there are a ton of fantasy points to be had in Tampa. It's just impossible to know who it's going to go to. We've seen Gronk score 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Mike Evans practically goosed you in week 1, scored 2 touchdowns in week 2. Antonio Brown gets you 20 points in week 1, gets 1 catch for 18 yards in week 2. It's just, how do you even figure out, do you just start them all with confidence, or do you have any hesitancy with any of these guys?
As a preview, I feel like you got to start all of them just because, first of all, they played the Falcons last week. But second of all, I feel like I played Mike Evans every single year when he plays the Falcons. And I know for sure he catches a touchdown every single time. So when he plays the Falcons, start him. When he doesn't play the Falcons, that's where you get a little bit of worried.
So another thing I want to just note on is that the Cowboys and Chargers game was probably one of the biggest fantasy letdowns, where the Cowboys won their game, but everyone was kind of pinpointing this game to be like a 30 versus 30 game. Ended 17-14. Dak finished the game with 7 points. Amari Cooper finished the game with like 5.5 points. It was just a very miserable game for every fantasy manager involved, unless for some reason you started Tony Pollard.
Tony Pollard's a beast. Watch out. Don't sleep on him. They said that they want to get him more involved in the offense, and they're clearly showing it this year. I wouldn't be too worried about Zeke. Zeke will get his points, but Tony Pollard's a pretty good back. He's probably one of the best handcuffs in the NFL right now.
If not, just a very desperate flex piece if someone's on bye or you're hurting on injuries already.
Yeah. Well, moving on to my week 1 reactions. I have Jameis and the Saints were a big time struggle. They did very well in week 1, but in week 2, it was a complete opposite. And I'm starting to concern my pick around Alvin Kamara just a little bit. It's definitely a fluke game, I believe. I think they'll get him more involved in the offense, but overall, the Saints just look so bad in week 2. I'm hoping that they can bounce back in week 3, but I guess we're going to have to see on that point. My second point is that the Chargers kind of fallen off the Cowboys. We thought it would be a high-scoring game, but the Chargers did look pretty good in that game. I think they had 2 touchdowns that were called back for horrific penalties that should have never happened. The announcers were even saying, I don't even know if that should be a penalty. So there's a lot of fantasy points that could have been have, but didn't have. Eckler looked good. Mike Williams looked good. Keenan Allen looked good. Jared Cook caught a touchdown, but they said a lineman was pushed into the end zone. They said that it was illegal and that he was down the line. Pretty upset about that because I own all of them and across all 3 of my leagues, but it is what it is. And then finally, the rookie QBs continue to struggle. I think if you're a Patriots fan, you saw Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions. He's struggling. Granted, it is the Patriots defense, and Bill Belichick loves to mess with the Jets. And then Trevor Lawrence as well. Still couldn't get a win. I think he threw 2 or 3 picks. It's a pretty big struggle for those rookie quarterbacks out there, but maybe it'll turn around for week 3 and on.
Yeah, the last rookie quarterback to beat Bill Belichick was Mark Sanchez during the Rex Ryan era.
Yeah, we bully the rookie quarterback, so I'm not surprised I threw 4 picks.
Moving on to my week 1 reactions. Titans are back in action. Being a Julio Jones and Derrick Henry owner, in week 1, I was a little bit nervous, mostly because Julio looked old and Derrick Henry looked like he didn't want to run the ball. but I was proven very wrong this week, and I'm happy about that. My next point are if you listened last week, I was like, okay, Cowboys Chargers, you want any piece of this game possible because there's going to be a lot of points scored. I could not have been any more wrong on that one.
But I think the entire fantasy community felt that way.
Yep. So that was a tough one. Amari Cooper is the definition of a boomer bust. He's one of those people that I was going up against him. Brian, I believe you had him in one of our leagues, and I was like, oh no, I'm facing Amari Cooper, and then
it's like 5 points
in there. Yep, exactly. So CeeDee Lamb had a decent game. He got more of the target share, but yeah, that was good to see for me. And then Zach Wilson was seeing ghosts. I said that last week, and I was proven correct. And so right, I think I should be called the fantasy foreseer over.
Well, I think one thing to note is Bill Belichick loves to take away the number one target, and what we saw from Zach Wilson is that he's going to hyper target Corey Davis. So you take that safety blanket away from him, combined with the fact that Jets have had horrendous injuries to the offensive line already. It was just, we all saw it coming. Zach Wilson was not going to have a good day no matter what happens.
It's the Patriots. You just got to expect that. I expect him to do better this week. Not that much better because they're playing the Broncos, and the Broncos defense actually looks pretty legit. But I think he'll do a little bit better than he did against the Patriots.
Now to go to the Devil's Advocate team for week 2. Now this team proved some of us wrong last week by having a decent score total. Not this week. We saw their quarterback Tua Tagovailoa get injured. So their entire team total only actually got to 58.4. They gave all 3 of us wins. So if you guys have been struggling with fantasy, at least you know that you beat the team we all hate this week. We all went 1-0. Bringing to me and John's a 2-0 versus team. Brian's right behind us, a 1-1, but it's a long season, Brian.
We got a dub. It's okay.
And I think we're in agreement that with Tua sidelined to the quarterback, we probably all kind of would hate the most to start in fantasy would be Jimmy G. So he's going to move right into the slot. The Devil's Advocate team has already got him pending on waivers. But to get into some impactful news, guys, 5 quarterbacks got injured this previous week, which is kind of an issue for fantasy. So let's start at the top. Tua got knocked out of the game early, a rib injury. He's day-to-day, uncertain if he'll play against the Raiders in week 3. Tyrod Taylor, expected to miss week 3 with a hamstring injury, has been placed on IR, I think, apparently. So that means Mills is going to be starting for the next 3 games. Carson Wentz rolled his ankle late into this week 2 game. He may not play in week 3. Andy Dalton injured his knee, has a bone bruise, will be out 1 to 2 weeks. So that means Justin Fields, we'll see the Fields a little bit more. And then Ben Roethlisberger has a pec injury. Mike Tomlin said the Steelers will have to be adjustable. So to me, that just says Najee Harris is going to get the ball some more.
You might get the ball 30 times a game, which I'm cool with because being a Najee Harris owner, but it is a little concerning when Big Ben goes down because that brings Claypool stock down, Deontay Johnson, which his injury wasn't that serious. I know we'll probably get into it later. That's good news that Deontay Johnson isn't that hurt, and also Juju as well.
Yeah, and then just a few other things to note. Jarvis Landry is heading to IR with his knee injury. Zach Ertz tested positive for COVID, so if he doesn't clear protocol, it's going to be a good game for Goddard coming up. And then Amari Cooper, with the disappointing game versus the Chargers, actually did suffer bruised ribs. And the Cowboys are hopeful he'll play in week 3, but I think you need to have a backup option ready in case he doesn't.
As an Amari Cooper owner, I'm kind of nervous. I don't really know what to do. I could either play some of my bench guys and gamble it on Sunday or just hope for the best and see if he actually ends up playing. I think I'm going to try to pick up Tony Pollard just in case that Amari Cooper can't play and put him in my flex.
I think just from years past, when Amari Cooper is dealing with an injury, even when he does play, he literally sits out the rest of the game after the first series. So I think if you're going into week 3, Amari Cooper is still questionable day to day. I would just avoid him for 1 week. He may go off, but I'm just not going to deal with his history of not playing in games where he's technically already hurt.
I feel the same way.
And then just a few defensive injuries. TJ Watt has a groin injury, most likely will be day-to-day. Bradley Chubb on the Broncos will undergo surgery for his recent injury. So those are 2 defenses taking a slight hit to their pass rushing core.
TJ Watt got $80 million guaranteed. I don't think he really cares too much about his groin injury.
No. He'll sit down on his couch of money.
Exactly.
But now to get into the key part of why these podcasts are fun, week 3 flex pickup, guys. So at the moment, my pick was going to be Michael Pittman Jr., and I might have to recall that statement if Carson Wentz isn't playing, because I don't care if they're playing against a soft defense in Tennessee this week. I'm not super into backup quarterbacks throwing the ball to sophomore wide receivers who are still trying to break out.
Well, my pick's probably the most added waiver wire guy this week. I'm going to count on it in terms of percentage in every single Yahoo, Fantasy League, ESPN, whatever it may be. It's going to end up being Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore has been explosive for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray looks like the MVP. He's actually led the team in catches and targets. I called it before the start of the season, and he's already starting to prove it now. AJ Green just isn't that guy. Christian Kirk didn't really perform in his week 1 as people thought he would. Rondale Moore is a great rookie. He's super fast. I think he runs like a 4.4, 4.3, something ridiculous. And with Kyler Murray still balling out, I see Rondale Moore continuing to have a lot of usage in this offense and be a pretty good wide receiver moving forward.
His snaps did increase from like 10% from week 1 to like 46% on week 2. So the team is starting to put him on the field more.
Could be a league winner. You never know.
Never know. So my pick was Sterling Shepard. He's had 2 good weeks in a row with a lot of targets, and I think the addition of Kenny Golladay to the team is really doing him well. One, because he has rapport with Daniel Jones, and so he just likes to throw the ball to Sterling Shepard. And then defenses are aware of Kenny Golladay over the top. Sterling Shepard is an underneath guy more or less, so he's getting a lot of targets and scored in week 1. And then the last 2 weeks he's had close to 100 yards or over. He's definitely a guy you want to pick up if he's still out there.
Hey, Berkey, can we get a flashback to the Kenny Golladay where you said that you wanted to draft him in fantasy, and now can you tell me why we shouldn't be drafting Kenny Golladay?
You shouldn't be drafting Kenny Golladay in fantasy right now because he's very injury prone, and I wanted to draft him before he got injured again in camp, Brian. Now that he was injured, I had to recall that statement. Also, I watched Daniel Jones in person at Patriots camp, and I was like, I want nothing to do with the Giants offense after watching Daniel Jones.
But Daniel Jones is balling, but Kenny Golladay has like 7 points in 2 games. So
yeah, Daniel Jones is balling from a running back perspective, not a quarterback perspective.
Correct. But running quarterbacks win fantasy football games.
Yeah, so my one thing with Sterling Shepard is I think he's been getting heavily targeted right now because Daniel Jones's typical safety blanket, Evan Ingram, has missed the first 2 weeks. Evan Ingram is slated to come back for week 3. So it will be interesting to see, does Sterling Shepard keep up this target share and market with Evan Ingram being back in the lineup?
With them playing Atlanta this week, you start him.
Okay.
Start him this week.
I mean, definitely. Yeah, that game is going to be oof. But I think for my reverse pivot, if Michael Pittman doesn't have a starting quarterback, I would be going with KJ Osborne from the Vikings. He's had 2 weeks over just plus 10 fantasy points. He's clearly the third target on the Vikings offense because they don't have a tight end that they want to put out. They've typically been in 3 wide receiver sets, and with the defense focusing on Jefferson and Thielen, Osborne has just been left open on so many plays where you might not like putting him in your lineup, but if he's in a flex spot, he could catch easily 5 to 6 balls for 50 yards and maybe a touchdown.
Dalvin Cook also went down twice in the same game. So if those injuries continue to linger and they got to focus on the passing game, I think KJ Osborne could be pretty good.
So I think, Brian, you're rooting for Dalvin Cook to go down.
I mean, I did. I said I don't wish injury upon any player, but I did call it fantasy force here.
Yeah. You're cooking up some hate over there. But we got to talk about a running back that me and Brian both don't like, but he is, if you're desperate, J.D. McKissick, if he's on waivers. Week 1, we thought we got rid of the problem of Cooties, but he came back for week 2, stole all these targets, stole a goal line touchdown in the 2-minute drill, and it's just leaving Gibson owners frustrated beyond belief that McKissick is on the field for so much. But if this continues, he's a worthy flex spot if you're desperate at running back.
It was game scripted for J.D. McKissick to do well. Antonio Gibson will be fine. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet, averaging 5.5 yards a carry. I think we're going to be okay with Antonio Gibson. But J.D. McKissic also did come in second in catches out of all running backs last season, so you kind of have to expect him to play a little bit. But I'm still not too worried about Antonio Gibson, even though I do hate J.D. McKissic.
I know, John, you're a J.D. McKissic fan, aren't you?
I am, mostly because I'm an Antonio Gibson not fan. I think he's vastly overrated, and J.D. McKissic is far and away the better receiver, even though Antonio Gibson was a receiver in college, which means he must not have been that great of a receiver, which is why he's now a running back.
I mean, he's a second-round draft pick, averages 5.5 yards per carry, has a faster 40 time than J.D. McKissic, but for some reason, we got to see it. I think both of them might have a hard matchup with the Bills in week 3, but it'd be interesting to see what they do in week 4 and week 5.
All right, well, moving on from John's ridiculous comment, my flex pickup for running back is someone I just mentioned earlier in this podcast, is Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard probably is already added in most of your leagues, was probably already drafted if someone had Zeke already, just chose him as a handcuff. But Tony Pollard is that dude. The Cowboys said they were going to give him more touches. They have been giving him more touches. He's arguably a better, fantasy handcuff than J.D. McKissic, I would say right now. Even though Zeke will probably be fine as the Cowboys score 50, 60 points a week, as they should be doing, not like last week, but Tony Pollard's a pretty good ad. He will get you points if you start him. Might not be the best all the time, but he could put up 20 like he did last week.
All right. So guys, I guess this is up for question. Can I pick the same guy I did last week and say I told you so?
Yeah, you can.
That was a good choice.
It was a good pick, but you can definitely keep going with it because I like the idea.
Yeah. So as I said last week, I picked Cordarrelle Patterson last week, and this dude shows up for 21 points. So clearly I win that one. But yeah, to reiterate what I said last week, the Falcons are going to be playing from behind a lot. And Cordarrelle Patterson is the better receiving back, and Mike Davis ain't that good. So he's going to be getting a lot of playing time, and he's going to catch a lot of balls. Matt Ryan's getting murdered in the pocket, so he needs to get the ball out quickly, and Cordarrelle Patterson is coming from behind him, so he's usually the closest guy. So if he's only rostered in 17% of leagues right now, apparently nobody listened to me last week, which is nuts. But pick him up if he's still out there.
With any big running back pickup for the week, guys, people can get really desperate because it's a thin position once injuries start piling up. So for wide receiver picks, you're probably spending between 5 to 10 tab on the guy you really want this week if you're really concerned about getting him over someone else. When it comes to running backs, I think Tony Pollard and Cordarrelle Patterson are probably the two big ones out of these three. As a Zeke owner, I feel like every Zeke owner should already have Pollard on their bench to begin the season for this kind of scenario. But let's say Pollard's out there in free agency right now. How much are you guys willing to spend on him with your fab?
Cordarrelle Patterson or Tony Pollard?
Both.
10 max.
If that. Yeah, it's still early. I mean, I'm a believer in the fact that you should keep fab points until later in the year and spend the big bucks when you know you got someone. Like wait for a big injury or something like that. But yeah, I would put like 7 on both of those.
Okay, I think the only reason why you'd probably spend more than 10 is if you're the Zeke owner and injuries are starting to pile up and you just want him on your bench. If I'm a Zeke owner and I don't have Tony Pollard, maybe I'm spending 14 or 15 on him, hoping that no one else is desperate for a running back, because if someone else really needs an RB2, they could be pushing for Pollard. So I think it depends on how your league is at the moment. So if you don't have Tony Pollard as a Zeke owner, check everyone's benches to see who needs a running back. And if no one's really that desperate at the moment, bid low. But if someone could be desperate, you should probably be willing to spend as much money as you would if you're going to be mad if someone else got him for a different amount sort of situation. So that's hard to really gauge, but that's kind of the mindset you have to take with picking up running backs on fab. Now to get into our streamers. Now this is always a fun topic. So my streamer quarterback, I'm picking Derek Carr versus the Dolphins. Now, I feel like the history with Derek Carr is that anytime we have faith in him is when he actually does nothing for us. But He had 25 points versus the Ravens, 25 points versus the Steelers, two good defenses. Everyone kind of just assumes the Raiders are now legit. I think Derek Carr could be a perfectly good streaming quarterback for this week. He'll most likely come back and make me regret saying that, but you have to give the man his props for his first 2 weeks.
I feel like Derek Carr is always consistent. The Raiders always do well to begin the season. I also feel like they also win games that they shouldn't, and they lose games that they shouldn't as well, or they should win technically. Because I feel like the Dolphins, for some reason, they might surprise us and they just end up like smoking the Raiders, and everyone's going to be like, "What happened? They just beat the Ravens in Week 1," and you're like, "Okay, well, where'd this Raiders team come from?" But for fantasy, I mean, Derek Carr could either put up 30 or he could put up like 15. You never really know. So I agree that you probably should be rostered if you are struggling with your quarterbacks right now. Now, moving on to my pick, I chose Teddy Two Glove Bridgewater. The Broncos look pretty good lately. I know that they did lose Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy was a big hit to the offense, but Courtland Sutton looked absolutely amazing in the last game. Tim Patrick looks really good. I said it last week as well. Noah Fant was going to have a breakout game, and he did have a breakout game. That offense is rolling right now. They have a really easy matchup against the Jets this week. If you're looking for a streaming quarterback, start Teddy Two Glove Bridgewater.
All right, my pick is Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones. He had me believing last week. He played Washington Redskins on Thursday Night Football in Washington. They're notorious for having a very good defense, particularly a very good defensive line. And Danny Dimes ran all over him. And he put the ball where he needed to be. They lost by a point towards the end of the game. Great game if you ended up watching it. But that's 2 straight games over 20 points. And this last one, he almost dropped 30. And this upcoming week, they're playing Atlanta, and we all know how I feel about Atlanta. Watch out for Danny Dimes this week.
At tight end, yeah, Danny Dimes. We'll see what happens. But my tight end pick this week is his tight end. For a lot of the same reasons John just mentioned, Atlanta's terrible. This could be a high-scoring game for the Giants. When Evan Ingram is healthy, he's fed targets. We didn't get to see a lot of touchdowns last year, but he saw 109 targets at the tight end position. If you were hunting for a tight end streamer and he is healthy, I'd be going with Evan Ingram as my week 3 streamer.
For mine, I don't love because I don't love the quarterback in Baker Mayfield. However, I'm going to choose Austin Hooper solely because there's no Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry just went on the IR. And I don't even think you guys could probably name 2 other Browns receivers after those 2. So I'm going to choose Austin Hooper.
What do you mean? The man of the people, Brian, Donovan's Peoples Jones.
Okay, fine. I knew you would get that one. That's like the only one I would actually know. There's actually another guy that they said in Jarvis's player profile, and I was like, I've never heard of that guy before in my life. Anyways, they do still have Njoku, and they are playing Chicago. Chicago does let up a lot of points to their tight ends. So I could see Austin Hooper at least catching a touchdown here. But then again, if you don't have a top five tight end, you're probably not going to get more than 10 points from any of the tight ends anyways. So if you need to start someone, look at Austin Hooper, but I wouldn't be upset if you went somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't love my pick either. Just because tight ends, I mean, how many tight ends on the waiver wire can you really love? I guess is the question. But I picked Jared Cook. He's playing against KC in KC. Only rostered in 43% of the leagues. In week 1, he caught 5 of 8 for 56 yards. Week 2, 3 of 5 for 28. I mean, that's pretty typical for Jared Cook. But I think they're going to be airing it out against KC because they're going to be down early. And KC is they're just going to go up early, and that's really my only reasoning for starting Jared Cook in this one.
And that's fair.
I mean, he's got a high floor, and yeah, he could go off this week.
And Jared Cook had a touchdown called back, so he would have had a much more impressive stat line if it wasn't for that too. So he's involved in the offense. Thankfully, he did not take the role that we wanted Mike Williams to get, but he's still there. He's still catching passes. So they do have a lot of options in that receiving game, but Jared Cook is still a bailout option for Justin Herbert. Now, when coming to defense and special teams, my pick for this week is the Carolina Panthers versus the Texans. This was an easy pick. Rookie quarterback, short week, will most likely be prone to making mistakes. If you haven't had any of the first team reps, if you haven't had any experience working with the starters, and you're going up against actually what has been a good defense so far through the first 2 weeks. It only is a recipe for disaster for the Texans. So I think you could easily see a few fumbles, a few bad throws that turn into interceptions, maybe a pick six coming from the Carolina Panthers this week.
Yeah, my pick will be the Vegas Raiders. I mean, they're playing Miami, no Tua. I don't like Tua anyway, so even if Tua was playing, I'd probably still choose Vegas. But Jacoby Brissett's in at quarterback. Will Fuller is coming back this week. That's one thing to look at. But in the 2 games that I've watched of the Raiders against the Steelers and against the Ravens, Max Crosby has been all over the quarterback. So I expect that to be with Jacoby Brissett this game. Raiders go to 3-0 and probably could give you a defensive touchdown. But there's also some better options out there, probably like the Panthers that I would choose before going with the Raiders.
Yeah, Panthers definitely the top pick of this week, but I feel like I'm bullying the Falcons a lot. But I'm going to continue to do so. Yeah. I'm picking the Giants against Atlanta. The Giants haven't done too great the last couple of weeks, but they're playing Atlanta, and I think Matt Ryan's a walking pick six, not because he sucks, but because the dude is getting beat down with his terrible offensive line. So I think there's going to be a defensive touchdown for sure, and that translates to a good fantasy game defensively.
When I played you, John, Derrick Henry got a 60-yard touchdown and 2 pick sixes from the Bucs defense in less than 2 minutes, which is like a huge game changer. Oh, yeah.
Same thing that happened to me. It was literally going up against Derrick Henry and the Bucs defense, and I was like, I'm fine. I'm up 20 points, and then nope, I'm down by 40.
I think it was Rondale Moore, 75-yard touchdown. 5 minutes later, pick six. Derrick Henry, 60-yard touchdown, pick six again. I was like, wow, I am down 50. That's crazy.
But that is the roller coaster of fantasy football. But let's get into our week matchups. Thursday Night Football will be the first primetime game. We're all going to feel really sad and disappointed after watching this game, unless you have a piece of the Carolina offense, because we're talking about the Panthers versus the Texans. Over under of 43 points, not very high. Carolina's favored by 7.5. So coming for the Panthers, they're coming off a game where they basically shut down the New Orleans Saints. You got McCaffrey having a great game, found the end zone this week. DJ Moore had a very fantastic game. Also is finally finding the end zone in his career. This could be a breakout season for you DJ Moore owners. The Texans have allowed 52 points in the last 2 games. As I just mentioned, they got a rookie quarterback going up against a solid defense. Who's had no time to prepare. It's going to make a lot of mistakes. If you get the Carolina's defense off of waivers this week, you should be in for a decent amount of points. On the flip side, the Texans, they will be without Tyrod Taylor, which means David Mills is going to be throwing the ball a lot, which also means might not be a lot of fantasy points to go around, even if he does hyper-target Brandon Cooks. I don't think it will be a good hyper-targeting because they might be off-center, they might be off-balance. They're not probably going to land right in the breadbasket that you would want them to. Lower your expectations. I don't think Mark Ingram is going to have 20 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. I don't think Philip Lindsay is going to have a good game. Even if it's all David Johnson coming from behind, I don't feel confident flexing him either. No one you should play on the Texans offense unless you're really desperate and you need to play Brandon Cooks. The situation you need to be aware of is that the Texans know this. They might shift their offense to try to protect Mills from having to force throws. But I believe the Panthers will be up so much that it won't matter, and they'll be trying to come back from behind, and it's not going to go well.
McCaffrey probably will have 50. So if you're playing against Christian McCaffrey, I'm sorry.
He's got like a 22-point floor.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But anyways, Colts at Titans, over under 51 points, Tennessee favored by 5. I think it's going to be a little closer than that. I have 27-24 Titans. My points is 1, big dog, Derrick Henry is back. They just feed him the ball, whether he's getting yardage or not, and sooner or later he's going to break through. I think in the first half, he was doing pretty terrible in the first half, and then the second half came around and he just broke loose. So
all it takes is that one long run from Derrick Henry to just defeat a defense, and then the rest of the game is just money for him.
Yep, I couldn't have said it better myself. Staying on Tennessee's offense, Julio Jones broke through. He is who he was beforehand. He just needs to get the targets. He had a touchdown called back, which was pretty devastating. On on a great catch, actually. He had over 100 yards. So look for him. And A.J. Brown is obviously going to get his. He had a tough game last week. But
4 bad drops.
Yep. And then I think Michael Pittman is going to have a big game. He broke out last week for over 100 yards. I think it was like 7-8 targets. No, 12 targets. Wow. 8 receptions, 123 yards. He's really the only quality receiver on that offense. So I think he's going to have a good game. So situation to be aware of: the Colts have lost against 2 pretty good teams. I think they're going to lose again against Nashville. Carson Wentz is not a good quarterback. I will say that every single podcast. But and then it might be a bounce back game for Jonathan Taylor. He hasn't really done too well these past couple of weeks, but the Titans have been pretty bad defensively of late.
If Carson Wentz doesn't play this game, do you still have faith in Michael Pittman, or are you benching him?
I have more faith in Michael Pittman.
With Jacob Eason?
Yeah, I don't care who it is. Brian, you could be the quarterback of the Colts, and I would have more faith in Pittman.
I'd get him some targets.
Yeah.
All right. On to the Falcons versus the Giants. Over under 48.5. Giants spread at -3. I think that the G-men end up winning this game 28-24. I'll get into why I believe that. But Danny Dimes, we didn't think too highly of him this season, but going into the season. But he has definitely proven it through his work on the legs over there, because he's run the ball like crazy. And he looked really good on Thursday Night Football too. So I have high expectations for Danny Dimes moving forward. He is looking really good. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, is still struggling coming back from injury, but I do believe that he will break out at some point as I continue to give him more carries. But who knows with that horrific offensive line. Sterling Shepard, he continues to show out. Kenny Golladay continues to suck. Sterling Shepard, I think, was one of the free agent pickups that we said to pick up for this week. He's highly targeted in this offense. Danny Dimes has been throwing some dimes to Sterling Shepard. So go out there, pick him up, because he's been a beast lately. The Falcons, they are a dumpster fire. 2 pick sixes in the final quarter of the last game against the Bucs. Matt Ryan just does not look the same as he did when he lost 28-3 against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But I do believe that Calvin Ridley had a pretty good game last week, and I do believe he'll probably have a pretty good game this week, because both teams are just not that complete. They're not great football teams, so I think it'll probably end up being a shootout. But in reality, I think that the G-men will probably come out on top here because they're more complete on offense and defense. But expect good things from the Falcons offense, because you never know what to expect from Matt Ryan.
I don't think anyone told Matt Ryan that Julio Jones isn't on the team anymore, because it looks like he's still looking for Julio on the field, and Julio's not on the field for him.
I feel like the Falcons is every year they go 0-4 and they suck to start the season, and then they all of a sudden just like start scoring so much, but their defense is so bad, so they try to play catch up all game, and then it shows fantasy relevance for people like, Kyle Pitts or the Julio Jones back in the day, or Calvin Ridley's breakout season last year. So it's going to turn around at some point. I don't know when it's going to turn around. They will continue to lose games, but fantasy points will start coming in at some point.
A game that should have a lot of fantasy points. We're going to move on to the Chargers versus the Chiefs. Now, Chargers disappointed us last week. I don't think they're going to disappoint us this week. The Chiefs are salty about how they lost this past week to the Ravens. This game should literally just be the beloved fantasy point scoring game of the week. Over under is 55.5, Chiefs by 6.5. So talking about the Chargers, I think one thing we all really like, if you took them late in drafts, is Mike Williams is proving to be a focal point of this offense. Has had 10 plus targets each week. Another awesome part is Eckler saw 9 targets, 9 receptions. So the worry about him not getting the passing work we wanted him to is now gone, which will be great. Well, also, the defense is starting to take a little bit of form. We were expecting big things from the Cowboys, but it looks like with Derwin James being healthy this year, they do have a little bit more of a formidable secondary. And Asante Samuel Jr. is starting to show the same talents that his dad had. So it's always fun to watch. Going from watching his dad play when we were younger to now watching his son play, we're pretty much a group of old men at this point. But the one thing I just want to point out is that the Chiefs defense is very suspect. They have led up 250 passing yards per game and 200 rushing yards per game so far. Now, they did just play Lamar Jackson and the Ravens team that did rush all over, but That means good things for guys like Austin Eckler getting goal line carries and running between the 20s. Coming to the flip side, a quiet week for players not named Travis Kelce. A Clyde fumble really just devastated the night, but I think they will rebound. The Chargers have led up over 170 rush yards and 2 touchdowns to Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott last week. This is going to be the game where we get to really decide to see if Clyde is worth having on your team or not. I think this should be a bounce back week for Clyde, but the biggest question is, why isn't he being more involved in the pass game when he was drafted for his pass catching ability? Why do the Chiefs keep running him to the side of the offensive line where it's all rookies and not the Pro Bowlers to the left? And they said they were going to get him more involved in the offense in the offseason. We've yet to see it happen. I think this is going to be a very determining game. And I think you're going to be happy with everyone on the Chiefs this week. Kelsey's ceiling may not be as high because I think Derwin James could be shadowing him a little bit because the Chargers are going to be smart about that. But it's Travis Kelsey. As we saw, he can take a 5-yard pass into a 40-yard touchdown. So just start all your Chiefs and all your Chargers this week.
It's going to be a good one. I got almost every Charger in that offense, so I'm hoping for big points in this game.
You charged up, Brad?
No, I'm charged up.
Moving on to Bengals versus the Steelers. Over under 45. Pittsburgh's favored by 4.5. I do think the Steelers are going to take care of business and cover the spread here. Fantasy-wise, I think both Mixon and Najee Harris are going to have a tough time. Both are actually pretty good against the run. And I just don't believe in Najee Harris, even if Roethlisberger is limited. I mean, he's going to get a lot of touches, but yeah, I think they'll be able to lock him up. I would look out for Juju though. If Deontay Johnson is out, which I think he will be, I think Juju is going to get even more targets than he already does, and really be the focal point of that offense. And then Jamar Chase he's really showed out, and I think he's going to break out. I also think T. Higgins is going to have a good game as well. And then situation to be aware of, this is a divisional matchup. So it might be a lower scoring affair. Like these guys might have a lot of yards, not a ton of touchdowns. It might be spinning the lotto on who scores. And yeah, the Bengals and Steelers have both been good against the run. So
it could be a very gritty game where honestly, like it's one player is going to break away for a 50-yard score, 50-yard gain, and that's going to be the big highlight from this game. Just because I feel like the Steelers defense is going to clamp down on a bad Bengals offensive line.
Should be a good one. Moving on, we got the Browns versus the Bears. The over-unders at 47, and Cleveland is favored by 7.5. I believe that the Browns are going to win this one 31-25 and don't cover the spread. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're continuing to show out in that backfield. Nick Chubb is turning out to be a pretty good fantasy back for those that did choose him. But it does concern me a little bit that he's not getting the full usage with Kareem Hunt in that backfield. Kareem Hunt didn't really do that great last week, but at the same time, they do use the both of them. On the flip side, they also have Jarvis Landry that they lost last week, and Odell Beckham is still injured. So the offense is slowly falling apart, which is reiterating my Austin Hooper pickup for this week. But the Bears also lost Andy Dalton, so now it's Justin Fields' time. I know a lot of people we're hoping for the situation that Justin Fields is going to start playing. It's his time to prove himself to be the true starter in Chicago. He's looked pretty good so far. And he's running the ball a lot. I think he had 10 carries in the first half. So that's concerning to David Montgomery. If you do own David Montgomery, I still think he'll be fine. But the usage of Justin Fields in the run game is definitely a little bit concerning. Allen Robinson should be seeing those targets still from Justin Fields. But with Justin Fields in this offense, you really don't know what's going to happen in the future for Montgomery and all the other receivers that are there. And a situation to be aware of, both teams have really, really good defenses. But I expect the Browns to run the ball often and early and end up winning this game in the end.
I think this is going to be one of those games where you keep looking at the clock and you're like, why is it already the third quarter? Because both teams are going to be run heavy, with both of them having with the Bears, Justin Fields will be running the ball with his ability. He didn't show he could really do well in the passing game when he got forced into action last week. That doesn't bode well for receivers. They could be very run heavy. And without having Odell yet and without having Landry, Kevin Stefanski loves his running backs already. So it could be a big Kareem Hunt getting all the catches day and just running through Nick Chubb the entire game. So this could be a very fast game when it comes to the clock.
Pretty boring game to watch, but Brown should win this one, hopefully. Unless Justin Fields obeys people.
A team that's actually been pretty fun to watch this year so far has been the Lions because of what they do in garbage time. So we got a fun one. We got the Ravens and the Lions coming up. Score game projection is a 51 point over under with the Tennessee being favored. Ravens being favored 5.5. So the Ravens have been passing more than usual because they've been in a game script where they need to score points a lot. They went up against the Raiders, who scored a ton of points. They went up against the Chiefs, who scored a ton of points. Lamar has been forced to pass. This is going to be the first game where they have the ability to control the game, go through the running game where they always like to normally do. This could be a good breakout game for one of their running backs. Be interesting to see if that's going to be Tyson Williams, who's been getting the bulk of the carries in between the 20s, but it seems like they love throwing Latavius Murray in the red zone for that veteran experience. We'll see if that maybe shifts a different way. Freeman, the journeyman from yesteryear, beat out Le'Veon Bell, so he is a third down back. Had a few big runs the other day for Devonta Freeman, but he's only going to be third down back worthy. Hollywood Brown is the interesting wide receiver right now because Brian has been high on him last year. You want to talk about Hollywood?
Hold on. I said week 13 last year, pick up Hollywood Brown, and what did he do? He dropped like 24 straight games in a row since last season, and he's taken it to this season, and now he's absolutely balling. I believe in Hollywood Brown. I like Lamar Jackson this year. I mean, he will probably fall off at some point, but ride the hot streak because Hollywood Brown's a beast.
Has scored 8 touchdowns in the last 8 games, so he's been on fire. I think he's the wide receiver 11 so far on the year. On the flip side, the Lions showed some fight into going into halftime, leading the Packers on Monday Night Football, but Aaron Rodgers came out the second half and torched them. And then we got to see what we wanted to see from the Lions: complete garbage time, force feeding the ball to their targets, not running the ball at all in the second half because they were down by so much, which means so many points for everyone named TJ Hawkinson. See a lot of dump offs to the running backs, but this is why everyone was high on TJ Hawkinson, because he's going to see a lot of targets. There's no wide receivers, and it's going to be garbage time the entire time. My one situation I'd say to be aware of, it seems like there's more of a split backfield in the Lions than people would want. Swift managers probably hate seeing how much Jamal Williams gets the ball, is always out there. They paid Jamal Williams to come in and be a reliable guy, so that's just something we have to deal with, but it's a situation to monitor going forward to see if that becomes more of a 50-50 split or if Swift eventually takes the bulk back from Williams.
All right, Saints versus Patriots. Over-under is 43. New England's favored by 3. I think the Pats narrowly beat the spread 24-20. Players to start the Patriots defense. I mean, always start the Patriots defense, but I feel like, they came off a really great game last week, and Jameis Winston also looked terrible last week. The entire Saints offense looked abysmal. So you got to start them. The Saints have been surprisingly good against the run, though, and against tight ends. So as far as the Patriots go, I think the receivers are going to have a pretty good game. I think they're going to stack the box. I mean, still start Damian Harris. I think he's established a floor. And I do think Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry will get their target share as well. But really look out for Myers and Aguilar to have good games. And then on the flip side with the Saints, Marquez Callaway, I was pretty high on him coming into the year, and now he's basically droppable.
I think it was that one preseason game where he scored like 2 touchdowns, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Marquez Callaway must be the guy Jameis is going to go to after 2 weeks." He's very much droppable for fantasy managers.
Yep, and as far as that, I mean, I wouldn't start anybody on the Saints offense besides Kamara, and even that, I don't think he's going to have a great game because we know how Belichick is. He usually likes to lock down the number 1 option, and I think he will do that. So if someone is going to have a big game on the Saints, it's going to be like Chris Hogan or something crazy like that.
I could see that.
It's going to be a day. Jameis Winston's going to throw a handful of picks, and we're going to be in the week 3. The discussion will be: do the Saints shift to Taysom Hill after 2 bad performances from Jameis Winston in a row? Because that's where it's heading right now.
Yeah, what do I feel like Chris Hogan's going to go off this week? Can we like do something if he does go off and he scores like 2 touchdowns? Can I be now the fantasy foreseer for the next week?
If Chris Hogan goes off for 2 touchdowns, I'll buy each of you a hoagie sandwich.
Fair. All right, moving on. The football team versus the Bills. Right now, the over-under is at 47, and the Bills are favored to win by 9. I believe that the Bills are going to end up winning this game 35-21. For the football team, Taylor Heinicke isn't as bad as people think. I said it last week. He's dueled with Brady in the playoffs. He almost beat him in the playoffs, ending their Super Bowl run. He looked good last week on Thursday Night Football. So don't sleep on the man because he is good. He has a crazy story too. He came from like the XFL, got signed to like a practice squad, like wasn't even going to make a team, and now he's a starting quarterback for the football team. So cheer up for Taylor Heinicke. Next point, I hate J.D. McKissick. We already talked about it. I'm an Antonio Gibson owner in 2 different leagues. If J.D. McKissick just wants to go to a different team, I'd be totally cool with that because Antonio Gibson is a pass catcher. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. He's not getting the carries he deserves. So give the man the rock, get J.D. McKissick on the sidelines, and good things will happen for the football team.
Flip side, to Gibson.
Give it to Gibson. That's all we got to say. He's going to score this week. I promise you. Get him in your lineup. It's going to happen. Flip side for the Bills. Josh Allen last week, he showed why he was a QB1 last year, winning against the Dolphins 35-0. Dolphins did not look great because Tua did go down, but Josh Allen definitely carved up that defense. The running backs also had some pretty good games too. Devin Singletary showed out. Zach Moss scored a touchdown. He did fumble too because that's just what Zach Moss does. But overall, the Bills did look very good. They're back in a midseason form and should win this game with ease. So situation to be aware of. Although the football team did look good on Thursday night, the Bills looked even better against the Dolphins. Expect a lot of points, but ultimately for the Bills to come out on top and win this game.
Are you concerned at all about the production from Josh Allen going up against the football team defense?
I am a little bit. Josh Allen hasn't rushed as much as fantasy owners probably wish he did, like he did last season. But I think he'll start kicking it into gear. There's definitely some newer weapons in this offense. They are running the ball a little bit more, probably to protect Josh Allen because he ran so much last year. But I think the Bills probably will win this game. Josh Allen probably have somewhere between like 20 to 30 fantasy points. So I don't think it'll slow him down too much. But it's definitely a little bit of concern because the football team is pretty good at defense.
I feel like this could be a sneaky game for Cole Beasley to walk away with like 10 catches for 60 yards because the D-line may stop the run game. So you're going to see a lot more quick passes potentially just to move the chains, and that is Cole Beasley's game.
Yeah, I doubt they run the ball a lot. They probably will try to get most of their points through the air.
All right, moving on to another dumpster fire versus really great fantasy team. We got the Cardinals versus the Jaguars. Over under 52. Cardinals favored by 7 points. First, we got to talk about the Jaguars. It seems like it's a team that's just filled with disarray. We finally got to see James Robinson get the bulk of the carries. Yeah, he only managed 64 yards. He was up against the Broncos defense, which is a really good run defense. Trevor Lawrence is still struggling. Right now has more interceptions than touchdowns. He's going up against another not stout defense, but this is a defense that tormented Ryan Tannehill in week 1. I don't think the Jags will make the same changes like the Vikings did to their game. Trevor Lawrence will probably be on the ground a lot, trying to run away from Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. With Shenault being injured, this could be another game where Marvin Jones and DJ Chark are heavily targeted. I just don't know how viable those targets will be until garbage time when the Dolphins are playing prevent defense and Marvin Jones can just find the spot in the zone. On the Cardinals side, Kyler Murray has been torching defenses. He's going to torch the Jaguars defense. You're going to start DeAndre Hopkins and be thrilled. Now it's just a guessing game of who's going to be the best second option. Is it going to be another week of Rondell Moore? Is AJ Green going to catch another touchdown? Could it be Christian Kirk catching 2 out of nowhere? Will Chase Edmonds finally score a touchdown? All I do know is it's not James Conner. Situation to be aware of, though, is Edmonds and Conner have been splitting carries, but Edmonds has been getting all of the receiving work. So We all knew that Chase Edmonds was not going to be a guy who's going to get a lot on the ground, but I do like knowing that he is the first choice out of the two and also gets all the receiving work.
Cardinals by 100. That's all I got to say.
Jets versus Broncos. Yeah, so over under
Jets, Jets.
Oh, I'm gonna puke. Over under 41 points. Denver's favored by 11 points. And I was kind of surprised to see that until I realized they're playing the Jets, so that they're gonna beat the Jets handily, 31-13. Broncos have had a pretty easy schedule the first couple games. They played, was it the Giants and then the Jags? So it only gets easier from here. Just some things to note. Braxton Berrios for the Jets has been soaking up targets in weeks 1 and 2. Zach Wilson seems to like him, and if it happens again in week 3, and I'm a believer, and he's starting to establish a bit of a floor. He's really the only guy I would look to start on the Jets offense. I don't think there's really anybody else to start other than maybe Corey Davis. But I mean, what's there to like there? As far as the Broncos, I think there's going to be a big game for a lot of players on that team. Courtland Sutton went off last week with Jerry Jeudy down. I think he will again. And Noah Fant also had a good game. He scored a touchdown. Look out for him to have a good weekend. Teddy Bridgewater, 20+ points in the first 2 weeks. I like him. He might be a week-to-week starter, but then again, he's played some pretty easy teams the first few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when he plays a team that is of better caliber. Situation to be aware of: the Jets suck. We all know that. The Broncos are must-start defense for this week, along with anyone on their offense.
I will have to say, if you're super, super desperate at running back, still don't play a Jets running back. But I will just want to point out, Michael Carter did have the most fantasy relevant game out of the 3 last week, even though he was the fantasy sleeper hype train of the offseason until we realized that he wasn't the starting running back. You know, things may change after seeing how bad Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman are. Michael Carter almost cracked 10 fantasy points last week, which is really awesome if you need a running back 3 on a desperate run, maybe when you have a bye week or something. So if he's out there, put in a low bid for him. He might end up on your roster, or you could get him for a $0 bid. Even though I'm saying that a lot because I do have him in one league, if you need a running back, he's there. But don't play him this week. Don't play him versus the Broncos. It'll still be really miserable.
Do not. It will be bad. Wait till he has a nice matchup, then you can start considering that. Moving on, we got the Dolphins versus the Raiders. You know how I feel about the Dolphins. I only talk about it 100 times on this podcast. The score of the game projection, over-under, is 45.5, and Vegas is favored by 5. I believe that the Raiders are going to win 30-0 because the Dolphins are that bad. Tua's dealing with a rib injury. I don't like Tua. I'm sorry about his injury. I hope he gets well. And it actually turned out to actually not be that serious. So I don't know how long Tua's going to be out. It's definitely going to be this week. I don't know about the week after that. Doesn't really matter because they're a terrible team anyways. Jacoby Brissett is now in at quarterback. So what we saw from the Dolphins last week with Brissett is that they were nowhere to be found. They had no offense. They were cycling running backs with Ahmed, Gaskin, and who's the third one? There's one other guy in that.
Malcolm Brown.
But there was like 2 fumbles. There was a ton of drop catches. Devontae Parker didn't have that good of a game. Jalen Waddle didn't look that good. Will Fuller is coming back this week. That's something to look at. However, I think the Raiders defense has stepped up in these last 2 games. So look for them to have a big game. The Raiders, they are 2-0. Derek Carr looks legit. Henry Ruggs could potentially catch that 80-yard touchdown. The Walrus is continuing to get targets after targets after targets, and their defense looks legit. So I expect big things out of the Raiders this week to go 3-0. Don't expect them to win too many games after this week because this matchup's just a juicy one. Again, it's not the most exciting matchup, but I expect the Raiders to win this game after watching what the Bills just did to the Dolphins week 2.
I like that. John, you want to take us all the way down? Well, actually, it's actually on me. So I'm completely off today, guys. This is on me, but Seahawks versus Vikings. Now, It was pretty disappointing last week as a Seahawks fan, but because I'm a big fantasy football guy, there was a point in the game after Derrick Henry was ruining my day. I had AJ Brown. I was like, please, for the love of God, find a touchdown for AJ Brown. But nope, it went right back to Derrick Henry and killed me in fantasy. But I think the Seahawks will have a very big game versus the Vikings. I think how you saw the Cardinals Vikings game, I think this game's going to go the same exact way. Score projection for the game is a 55 over under with Seattle favored by 1. So that just tells me that no one knows who's going to score the most points in this game. Tyler Lockett has been shredding defenses. I believe this is because defenses are really scared and paranoid about DK Metcalf. So Tyler Lockett has been left in single coverage or just with the worst cornerbacks and just running down the field wide open. And until defenses figure out how to cover both, I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. The Seahawks have still been trying to force the run. Chris Carson only had 31 yards, but found the end zone twice. So that concerns me when he's not getting that high end yards per carry average. But then if he finds the end zone, it's hard to complain about. On the other side of the ball, the Minnesota Vikings, Mike Zimmer has not been able to fix this defense. So that just means you got great fantasy points for Dalvin Cook, who leads the offense. It has to go through him if it's going to be successful. And Justin Jefferson has had the same issue that DK Metcalf has. Defense have adjusted to him, which means Adam Thielen is having the same kind of production that Tyler Lockett has, where he's just running freely in the middle of the field, pretty much open the entire time, has been off to a hot start. Unless defenses can figure out how to cover both, it will most likely continue. As I mentioned for a potential free agent pickup, KJ Osborne has shown that he is the number 3 option in the passing game. Defenses don't know who he is, so he's just wide open down the field the entire time. And my situation to be aware of is both of these secondaries are weak. It's going to be another high-scoring game for the wide receivers. And I did like how the Vikings changed up their offense based on who they were playing. I'm kind of excited to see what they'll do based on the Seahawks. It could be another big game for Dalvin Cook after the Vikings watch Derrick Henry run all over my hometown team.
As an Adam Thielen owner, this happened at the beginning of last season where Adam Thielen started the season off as a top 3 fantasy wide receiver, and then people said, trade him. Justin Jefferson's really good. And then what ended up happening, Adam Thielen wasn't that great to end the season, and Justin Jefferson absolutely exploded. So I probably expect the same type of year script as that happens. Justin Jefferson is taking a lot of the coverage now, but for long term, I think that Jefferson will end up being a better receiver than Thielen. Just my take.
I agree with that. It's just like last year, Adam Thielen finished as a top 10 near the top for wide receivers, mainly because he had a high volume of touchdowns. If you took away some of those touchdowns, he'd probably be more in the Robert Woods range, just for like wide receiver 13, 14. So as long as he scores touchdowns, Adam Thielen is good. But the games where he doesn't find the end zone, you may be left a little disappointed with what he gives you.
For sure.
All right, moving on to what I think is, and most people think is the game of the week. I'm amped up about this one. Buccaneers versus Rams. It's going to be a good one. Over under 45.5 points. It's going to be a shootout. I've got the Bucs 31-28. And they're so as far as receivers go, spin the wheel for Bucs receivers. You start all of them, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is one of the ones where all of them go off because I think Brady's going to be slinging it. Everyone's going to be watching this game. So, I mean, start all of them, maybe not with confidence, but you got to start Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. Cooper Kupp's going to have a great game. This dude's a baller. Apparently him and Stafford have some sort of thing going on there. So Cooper Kupp could be a league winner at this point, early season league winner. And then Sony Michel, ? We'll see what happens there with Darrell Henderson banged up. Start Brady, start Stafford in this one because, like I said, it's going to be a shootout. And then I would actually, so I have the Bucs defense in one of my leagues, and my first thought would be like, all right, they're playing the Rams. They're a good defense, or they're a very good offense. Might want to shy away, maybe play a streamer. I'm going to still start them. Mostly because, there could be sacks, turnovers, could get a pick 6 in there. The Bucs defense is just that good. They're an every week start, so I'm going to continue riding with them.
I just want to talk about this game just a little bit more because One thing I just want to point out is that the Rams still have Jalen Ramsey, who traditionally loves to shut down whoever he lines up against. Do you think he shadows one of these wide receivers, or do you think he just is put on different guys throughout the night? Typically, I feel like he likes to shadow Mike Evans. So if one of these guys is going to have a quiet night, it's probably going to be Mike Evans.
I would agree there. If anyone is going to benefit, I would say it's Antonio Brown because he's in the slot.
And then on the Sony Michel front, I think Darrell Henderson is dealing with a rib cartilage issue. So Sony Michel could see the bulk of the carries. My biggest concern is that this Bucks defense does not let you run on them. So I think if Sony Michel is going to have a good game, he's going to sneak in for like a short goal line touchdown, or it's going to be through the passing game in some sort of scenario.
It's going to be a good one. Bucks should win this game because the Rams made it close with the Colts last week. But
this should be the Sunday night game. I really don't like the fact. It's like, could we on the NFL, could you kind of make this happen sort of situation? The entire nation knows that this game should be the Monday night or the Sunday night game. The next two games are not as exciting.
Yes, correct. Speaking of the Sunday night game, Packers versus the 49ers. It's a divisional game. The over-under's at 47.5. And San Fran's actually favored by 3.5, which is surprising to me after how Aaron Rodgers looked last week. Fun fact, I actually wrote some notes before the Monday night game last night predicting that the Packers would smoke the Lions, in which they did. Rodgers and Adams are back in full force. They had a huge win over the Lions. Aaron Jones with 4 touchdowns. If you had Aaron Jones in your lineup, congratulations.
Congrats.
Probably won your fantasy football week. I'm a little sad that Davante Adams didn't score because it would have won my game in another league, Turkey. But we're not going to talk about
I needed that win so badly, Brian. I just want to talk about every single time that the Packers hiked the ball, I would just watch Davante Adams run free down the sideline and be like, "Oh my God, no, this is it."
That 150-yard catch by Davante Adams, I was like, okay, yeah, that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams are back. He didn't score though, so Berkey got a win. Didn't go 0-5 in his league. His league.
It's been rough. It's been a rough start for me.
On the flip side, though, for the 49ers, they are down to one healthy running back. JaMychal Hasty went down with an ankle injury. Trey Sermon carried the ball one time, and now he's in concussion protocol. Thank you for all the Trey Sermon hype because I wish I didn't draft him. So Elijah Mitchell is he's banged up, but I think he's going to be active for this game. And if so, he's probably an RB2 because the Packers do have a terrible run defense. So get Elijah Mitchell in your offense. In your lineups. I know he didn't do too good last week, but I expect bigger things from him this week, considering that he's literally the only running back left. Brandon Ayuk, still nowhere to be found. I have no idea where he is. I still hate Kyle Shanahan. He's still the worst coach out there. Just kidding. He's not actually bad, but I do hate him in the way he uses his players. Deebo Samuel is actually balling out. I didn't expect that from him. I don't think a lot of people did, but he's been pretty solid. So put him in your flex lineups out there. But overall, this is a divisional game. I think that it's going to be a pretty good one on both sides of the ball. The Packers are starting to turn their season around. I did have the 49ers, I believe, winning at first, but after watching last night's game against the Lions, I think the Packers pulled us out in a close one.
Okay, so I just want to kind of touch on the 49ers running backs because this is the same issue we had last year with them getting hurt. Are you worried at all about the fact that they now have signed 50 million running backs to their practice squad injury when it comes to Elijah Mitchell?
Was it Duke Johnson and
so I think it was Duke Johnson and Lamar Miller were going for workouts. They signed Kerryon Johnson, and then they just signed the running back from the Cincinnati practice squad who's 6'2", 240. Yeah, it's just one of those things. They're making so many moves at running back. I'm not super into Mitchell being the full-time starter for the rest of the season.
Yeah, for the rest of the season, no doubt. I'm saying this week, Elijah Mitchell, because they will not get up to full speed. I mean, Trey Sermon had a whole preseason. He learned the playbook. He did all this, and he didn't even play a snap. Kyle Shanahan clearly loves to use the running backs that know the playbook, that are healthy, that are going to be there. So for this week, Elijah Mitchell start. Going forward with all these running backs that are coming in, I guess you really can't tell. For those people that put 78 fab points on Elijah Mitchell, I'm sorry, probably not going to end up working out in the end. One.
Yeah, that was an interesting move there.
If you're desperate, you're desperate. But let's talk about a team that is desperate for more wins this year, the Cowboys, John.
Yeah, Eagles versus Cowboys. Over under 51.5. Dallas is favored by 4. I think the Eagles are actually going to win this one by 4. They looked pretty slow on offense last week. The Eagles did against the Niners, but some things to note is Jalen Hurts is an every week starter. If it's purely because of his legs. If you had doubted him earlier in the year, he's established a floor as like a 20-point guy. You can start him every single week. My next point is Tony Pollard is better than Zeke.
Fair. I mean, think, no, but yeah. Sure. Well,
no, I think you're going to see him emerge as an even carry guy with Zeke. I think Zeke's on the downhill slope here.
But Zeke and Prescott are best friends, and you can't split up best friends, John.
I don't think Zeke Elliott will be a first-round draft pick in fantasy football after the season. However,
no,
Zeke
most likely not.
That's what I'll say.
One guy to watch out for on the Eagles. Do you see this dude by the name of Quez Watkins? Last week he had two catches for 117 yards. He didn't score, but this dude's fast. And I wouldn't pick him up now, but he's someone to watch out for as maybe emerging as the second option in the pass game. And then, so situation be aware of, the Eagles couldn't do anything last week against the stingy 49ers defense, but the Cowboys defense is terrible, and they'll put some points up on the board this week. I think Miles Sanders will have a good game. I think he's going to run the ball really well.
Back to the Quez Watkins thing. I have Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts in one of our other leagues, and they said that Devonta Smith caught the 91-yard catch. So clearly, as an owner of both, I was freaking out. And then 2 minutes later, they switch it over, and I ended up losing by 2 points in that league, which that would have won me the game. And then Berkey with the Devontae Adams losing by like 4 points. So not a great week for my fantasy teams, but we're coming back this week.
It's only week 2, but you can only say it's only week X, Y, and Z until it's like week 4. And then it's just like, well, now the panic is setting in.
Of course.
John, now let's end our podcast with your favorite segment, the Clown of the Week. So do you want to take it off?
Will Knox, my friend, if you're watching this, you know this one's coming. My dude, after Derrick Henry, he has Derrick Henry in one of our leagues, and he texts me after his 40-plus point game and asks me what the fantasy payout is for the weekly fantasy payout. And I said $20 because it is. And then he responds with, cool, I expect my money at 9:00 in the morning sharp on Tuesday. Sure enough, he does not win because Aaron Jones went off and he was not the week's highest scorer. And I wake up to a text message this morning that says something like, I jinxed myself and I said you deserved it. So you are the clown, my clown of the week.
I like that. That's a good one. Well, it's the man, the myth, the legend, the face of this podcast is Matthew Gets Missed. Wrong league, not the fantasy podcast league, but our other fantasy league that we're all in together. Gatsy came over around 2:00. I mean, he fell asleep within 5 minutes of watching football. But before he fell asleep, he told me that he started Larry Roundtree as the backup on the Chargers. Why? Because he heard it in a podcast driving to work and he read it online that he was going to be a beast. What did he do? 0.3 points, 1 carry for -1 yards, and 1 catch for -1 yards. He still won because Little Rumney scored 80 points, so I'll give him props there. He put up like 100 points, and Little Rumney put up 80. But he started Larry Roundtree because he heard it on a podcast. Never start Larry Roundtree, please. Just anyone else. There's so many better options out there. He's my clown of the week.
He's listening to the wrong podcast. Clearly.
I know. Exactly. I mean, he should be listening to the one that he's the face of, but he just resists.
We would never utter such nonsense on this podcast.
So my clown of the week, I'm putting it on myself because on paper, it looked like I made the right decision playing Antonio Brown versus Atlanta. I felt so foolish when all he got was 1 catch for 18 yards. And I look at my bench and I see Julio Jones, 15 points. And I see Mike Williams, like 20 points. I'm just like, I still won the league or won the week, thankfully, because of TJ Hockey Lease. But I felt so foolish believing in Antonio Brown over two other proven options. For me, it's just going to be a series of which wide receiver do I put in now, because I have all these guys that I feel the same about, and I don't know which one to put in my lineup. So I am the clown of the week for myself for week 2.
I mean, Antonio Brown, you feel like you should start him against Atlanta, but that is a tough scenario to do. So yes, you deserve a clown for this week, but I don't disrespect the decision.
All right, boys, to wrap it up, as always, guys, pay attention to the news, pay attention to injuries. One thing I can advise is when people have to drop other players to pick up the guys they want each week, look at who they dropped, because it could be someone that can help out your team. They could have not picked the guy you wanted, and he could have fallen, and you could pick him up for nothing instead of having to worry about bidding on him. So the best thing to do in the morning is look at waivers to see who actually is now available for you to pick up.
We're all going 9-0 in all of our fantasy leagues this week, so just get ready for it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next Tuesday when we all win our games.
As always, guys, cheers.